Well, jingle my bells. Welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry, covering the latest news, industry issues, what to see and do, and showcasing theatrical talent, whilst always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. Hello and a Merry Christmas to all our listeners around the world. My name is Andrew Keats, and I'm your host. Now, today we have an infamous social media personality. He has run 2 West End concerts. They were called Search for a Twitter Star and Search for a Composer Star. He's a weekly contributor to the stage. He's author of the hugely popular Everything You Always Want to Know About Acting But Afraid to Ask, Dear, and he's just got a new title today. Please welcome the man behind the mask, West End producer.
Hello, dear. Oh, listen at that crowd. How wonderful. Ho, ho, ho to you all. Thank you for having me, dear.
My absolute pleasure. Now, coming up on today's show, on the Soapbox, West End producer and I will be discussing mental health and the various ups and downs that come with it in the industry. I'll be going through all the latest dramatic news. We'll have music from Meredith Braun's new album, When Love Is Gone. And of course, I'll be interviewing West End producer all about his life, career, and setting him some infamous Christmas Show People challenges. You're listening to the Snow People podcast. Welcome to the show, dear. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, my dear. I'm thrilled, excited, and a little bit aroused.
Are you ready for Christmas?
Well, just about. I've got a few gifts, but there's a few people I'm considering buying for. Mm-hmm. I have a little a system, you see, out of 10, and if they haven't treated me above a 7, they get fuck all from me.
Sort of like the Craig Revel Horwood approach to Christmas.
Yes,
7?
Absolutely. Yes, precisely, my dear. And if you're above that, you're fabulous, darling.
And what are your Christmas plans? Where are you spending them?
Well, I'm going to spend them at home, my dear. I'm in North London, near Hampstead Way, you see, with my family, nieces, godsons, etc., my Jean Valjean teddy bear, and my Miss Saigon blow-up doll.
Yes.
Getting very intimate and Christmassy around the fire.
And, of course, a bottle of Dom Perignon, I'm sure, will be just an arm's reach away.
Just with an arm's reach. Well, sometimes mixed with a little bit of Baileys at Christmas.
Champagne and Baileys, does that work?
Not at all, but that's why I like doing it, dear.
And what are you hoping Santa's going to bring down your chimney this year?
Well, it's a very good question, my dear. What a few more CD soundtracks might be nice. I must say, I love getting theatre vouchers, even though I spend my whole time and life in the theatre. I still like receiving the gift of theatre vouchers and a few little surprises, one hopes.
So for you, Christmas is more about receiving than giving?
Well, yes, I think so, my dear, but I am a very big giver as well, particularly on Christmas Eve after a few bottles.
Talk about stuffing the turkey. Now, before we plunge into West End producers' past, I'm going to have a little chat briefly with the man behind the mask. For those of you who don't know who West End producer is, he is a cult social media icon who has attracted both national and international press attention for being an anonymous social media theatre producer impresario. Gosh, try saying that after a bottle of Dom. He attends press nights behind a very impressive prosthetic mask, of which he has on in front of me as well, often clutching a Jean Valjean teddy bear and a bottle of Dom Perignon. When did you first appear on Twitter, which is where it all started, and why?
Well, it was about 5 years ago, I do believe, and it was mainly because, of course, my full-time job is working in theatre. It's what I do and what I've always done. And I was just aware that a few people were taking the business far too seriously. I mean, we jump around stage and people put on costumes and I help backstage in front of house, and that's how I started. And I was just seeing that these people were getting rather upset and giving themselves so much stress stress, I thought I need to do something that rather light-hearted to poke the people in charge, the people with the power, and bring them all down to earth. Because, of course, there is power in the industry, but they're the same as you and I and the actors and my fellow producers. We're all on the same level, just trying to put on a bloody good show.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people cross-dress for goodness sake this time of year. It's just about being fun. So that's when I started doing the Twitter account.
And out of interest, because there have been some extraordinary people linked to who is West End producer, who have been some of the most extraordinary people that they thought are the man behind the mask.
Well, they thought it was Cameron, of course, for a long time. Andrew Lloyd Webber, dear Billy Kenwright. Oh, dear Billy. I did a little write-up in What's on Stage one April Fool's Day saying that I was dear Billy. And he's never spoken to me since. In fact, I understand he's trying to whip me still. I actually did call Bill's office after that and said, "Is Bill there? I'd like to say what a fun joke that was." And his receptionist said, "Yes, he does never want to speak to you again." Well, to be
so
fair.
sad.
Yes, well, he never did in the first place, dear, to be fair. But who else? Oh, and Dale Winton, of course. I mean, that's a funny one. I mean, I possibly am Dale Winton, dear. There's Craig Revel Howard, various directors, various agents and producers out there as well. One was, who is it? His name's Stuart Piper.
I thought you were Stuart Piper for a long time.
Yes.
When, at the very beginnings, I thought you could be Stuart, but then I saw you both in the same room together and went, well,
yes.
that's an extraordinary trick.
An extraordinary achievement, you see. But I'm much better looking than Stuart, you see.
No comment.
No comment on that, even in the mask. Yes, I'm only joking, my dear. But it's a remarkable thing, and that's one of the joys of it, you know.
I suppose the other thing, of course, which I said to people about you, is West End producer is a male. But of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person behind the mask is a man.
No.
That's not necessarily the case.
No, precisely. I'm not going to reveal that I am, in actual fact, Nika Burns today, because...
Do you want some snacks?
Well, yeah, I love some. Yes, thank you, dear. So I can't reveal that. Of course, yes, let's get some snacks, but not too rustly, remember, after her announcement yesterday. Of course, there's a little bit in my book about that, but we'll get to that anyway.
We'll get to that.
But, yes, the intrigue's quite fun, and I must say I like going to press nights and everything, and people come up to me, and I speak to people I know, and they have no idea who I am, and that's quite funny. And I must say the status. When I go to press nights as West End producer, of course I work in theatre, but people don't know what I've produced and what work I've put on. But they treat me with wonderful respect and get me as much cheap, warm white wine as my little fiery heart desires. Yet when I go as me, they I don't get the same respect. So it's an interesting juxtaposition to live through, actually.
It must be quite exhausting as well, where, for example, where I've contacted you via your mobile, for example, which is a completely dependent mobile for West End producer,
yes.
And the email. I mean, it must be quite exhausting to keep up the facade as well.
Yes, well, it is. I often, when I started it, sometimes it felt like being on a strange James Bond mission. Each time I would go out and try and not to get caught or try and not get followed after the show. I mean, if I'm honest with you, there has been times when I've got changed in the public toilets at Charing Cross Station or in the back of a cab when my office in central London is full of people who might see what I'm doing, you see. So one has to be quite prepared to do anything to get into character, to get into the costume. But I've got it down to a quick art now. I can do it in about 5 minutes. It doesn't take long.
And has there ever been any incidents where people have tried to remove the mask? I mean, theatre people can be a little bit, yes, batshit crazy.
They can be batshit naughty fuckers, can't they? Yes, apparently when I was at, I think it was a chorus line, Amanda Holden was behind me with her hands looking like she was going to peel back my mask. But the funny thing I must tell you, Amanda, I mean, we all love a little bit of Amanda Holden, don't we? Particularly when she's not on stage. The funny thing about her is she was apparently stood behind me, and I just turned and waved. And the joy is that if she does take my first mask off, underneath my first mask, I wear another mask, dear, believe it or not. Look, here's the proof. Look at that.
Oh, you absolutely do.
You do, you see.
Yeah.
I wear 2 masks because, as one knows, when one does anything quite intimate, one must wear protection.
Well, I'm not the man to talk to when it comes to that. I made that mistake in the past.
Well, dear, always wear double layers to be sure.
Do you think you'll ever reveal your identity? Do you think that will ever occur?
Yes, I think it will, my dear. If I'm honest with you, there are times when you quite astutely said, it does become quite tiring sometimes. And, of course I have my own life. And sometimes this can be a hard thing to juggle with my own life, keeping it up and writing a book and writing a column every week and going to press nights and responding to emails and carrying on tweeting even. It does take a lot of time. And someone said to me, it's a little like having a split personality. And it's exactly that. Because although I work in the industry in a similar vein to Webb as the producer, I also am not him in his sense of humour, his personality, the way he moves, the way he talks, and what kind of show pants he wears, So it's an interesting one. But in answer to your question, yes, possibly next year.
It's funny, as we approach Christmas, I imagine the film that sort of replicates your life so beautifully is probably Mrs. Doubtfire.
I adore that film, my dear. It's wonderful. Yes. Well, if I managed to do half of what Robin Williams did in that film, I feel I've succeeded. But what do you think? My tits aren't quite as good, are they, as Mrs. Doubtfire, sadly?
Again, no comment. And if you did reveal your identity, because certainly in the early days there was information that was coming out into Twitter, which many said that information only existed in certain tight-knit offices, which is where I think the Cameron sort of guesses came about. My question is, would there be any repercussions to you for releasing information or gossip? Do you think there would be any repercussions for revealing your identity?
Yes, well, I hope they want to whip me, dear. I mean, I need to get some pleasure somewhere. Well, no, the other thing, of course, is it only me?
Yes,
now,
of course.
Let me pose that to you. Who knows? There may be more than just the web in front of you. The web working... check Twitter. Now, is a tweet going to go out this afternoon whilst we're recording this, when you can see that I'm not touching my phone? See, that's intriguing, isn't it? So, there's lots of things that it may not just be, but yes, there is that slight fear, isn't there, that there's repercussions. But everything that Web does, you see, the gossip, it was never vindictive, it never is. It's never done to hurt, upset, or provoke any nastiness or I suppose bullying or anything like that. It's done out of a joy and a love of the business. I adore theatre. I adore everyone involved in it. And everyone I've poked, prodded, teased and tickled around the ballsack reason really knows that I admire them greatly. Yeah. I think everything that I've done is from a loving point of view, you see. And hopefully they will see that. And if not, I will just find an obscure Greek island and take some people with me to keep me entertained.
Well, I would be delighted to join you, as I think it's beautifully subversive humour, and I think you're absolutely right. In these days of uptight power struggles and things, how nice to poke a little bit of fun at our own business. It's just holding up a mirror.
Yes.
And
well, you see, there's satire in everywhere we look, on TV, films, news, etc. And I was aware that there wasn't really a satirical character in theatre at all.
No.
So that's another reason I started, because it deserves to be satirised, because it's absolutely bloody ridiculous, dear. You know?
I could not agree more. Now, for listeners of the show, you will be expecting that we usually start the show off with a Show People challenge. Now, I wasn't able to get hold of a copy of Web's CV, I'm afraid. So instead, I thought that you and I might both be rather large fans of some musical theatre quiz. Ooh. That's right, a musical theatre quiz. I'm going to ask you some specifically theatrical or musical theatre Christmas questions.
All right, yes.
You have approximately 1 minute to answer them all. Let's play musical theatre quiz. Okie dokie. Who sang Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas in the 1944 musical film Meet Me in St. Louis?
I'm going to be very bad at this, aren't I?
I don't know.
Oh, is it, Marilyn Monroe?
No. Judy Garland, I'm afraid.
Of course it was, you silly bloody wet.
Who wrote the song Turkey Lurkey Time from the musical Promises, Promises?
I think Belinda?
No, it was Burt Bacharach.
Oh!
Okay, let's do a nicer one. What is the first line of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol?
Oh, good God. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. The heat is on inside man. The ghosts are hotter than hell.
No, the Marleys were dead. Here's one.
Shit.
The musical Billy Elliot wishes a famous political figure a Merry Christmas because it's one day closer to her what?
Her death, dear.
Yes! Very good.
Yes, I've got one. Bloody Theresa May. I mean, Margaret Thatcher.
Very, very good. Well, not bad. I have no idea what the score was, but who cares? It is
My dear,
just
that
Christmas.
was just a piece of dark brown shit, wasn't it? I mean, I was bloody awful, wasn't I? Oh, good God.
Hello, my dears. You have the ineffable and probably undeserved pleasure of listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. This is Stephen Fry wishing you a wonderful listen. Thank you.
It's time for the Soapbox, the part of the show where me and my special guest wax lyrical about an industry issue. What are we going to be talking about today?
Well, I thought, of course, most people would have thought I'd want to talk about something silly or foolish, but a matter close to my heart is mental health, actually, and particularly how it can affect those working in the performing arts industry.
What do you think some of the issues that we have against us with this?
Well, you see, I've had issues with it myself, which is why it's so dear to my heart. And I try and back campaigns like Time for Change that the MTA Academy are doing, and all these ones. And I've written about a few times in the state. It's a very particularly, I would say, for self-employed people. Full stop. Actors, sadly, many of my closest friends are actors. They're in work and then they are out of work. So they can feel hugely successful and then feel like they're not succeeding at all. The business is getting harder by the year with more well-known people taking smaller roles. It's making it harder for new actors to make their first steps in the industry. And that can be awful and hard mentally. And the hard thing is to keep yourself positive, to keep yourself upbeat and creative when you are not actually in a show, acting or rehearsing. I always think it's you're up and then you're down as an actor, is what I've been told, and I can see that. You feel successful, then you feel unsuccessful, don't you?
Indeed, and as I've said on previous episodes, there is no industry where somebody will go through more rejection in 1 year than most human beings perhaps might go through in 5 years.
Absolutely, and it's hard. And with social media, it's so easy to see everybody else doing so bloody well. So you start chastising yourself. You start being hard on yourself for not succeeding. And you start questioning what you can do. And I've spoken to so many of my actor friends about this. And one thing that I would say is you cannot identify yourself as an actor. You cannot say, let's say I, Andrew Keats, am only successful when I'm an actor, well, when I'm a director. Mm-hmm. That is not your identity. No. You are you. You are wonderful you. You are your personality. You are what you're doing to try and succeed. Your enthusiasm, your history, your family, your friends. That is how you should identify yourself. But of course it's hard because you can feel shame in not working because your family maybe made a sacrifice for you. There's constant pressure. So all I think is you need to speak to other actors and creatives and people in the industry, because now people are being more open about it, and there's a support network out there if you talk. It's one of those professions, isn't it? I've always thought where an actor can perform, and when they are not performing, feel like they're back at the beginning of the ladder, like they haven't moved up at all or gained anything from any work they've done. Of course you have, my dear. Everything you do is wonderful. Every person you make a connection with is a positive. And I always think to any actors out there and performers and directors, people working on musicals, composers, I admire you all because it is so hard, isn't it? It's so hard.
The thing I found as a director, which I find especially useful, is, of course, when I'm meeting a new company, there are different types of actor. You know, I'm always asked, "Oh, what's your process?" And I always say, "Well, let me know who the company are first, and then I'll work out what the process is going to be." The thing that always helps me is actually when actors are very honest, which is quite difficult because some people feel very vulnerable about their mental health. I much prefer to know, you know, are you an actor that suffers from anxiety?
Yes.
Because then if I know that, and of course we can all be kind to each other, we can all be supportive, but just like if you're a method actor or not, there are certain exercises and ways to work with that actor to get the best out of their potential. If I know, in fact, if I know that there are certain strategies that really, really help you, then of course we'll do that. One particular actress who is extremely dear to me, who... well, she wouldn't mind me mentioning at all. The wonderful Eve Polycarpou, who I did Jacques Brel is Alive and Well and Living in Paris with. Wonderful, dear friend, someone who means a great deal to me. And both, it was an extraordinary time because I had just started medication for my HIV.
Right.
So I was all over the place with these horrendous drugs that were not working and ringing through my head. And on top of that, I had Eve, who in the morning was just unfocused and not the performer that I thought she was.
Yes.
Anyway, like all great established actresses and jumped up young directors, we came to blows. And I said, you know, I just don't understand why you're not focusing, why you're not working on this, Eve. You're better than this. You know, and she said, well, I don't understand why you're so short. And I said, well, I've just started some medication. And she said, so have I. And Eve had a brain tumour, which she very openly talks about. I'm not revealing any information, but the medication that she was on meant that in the mornings it was very difficult. But by both of us being so quiet about these horrendous drugs and medical conditions that we had in our lives, we weren't serving each other. And it was as simple as asking Eve, oh, it's easier if I call you in after lunchtime. And then we can work with somebody else in the morning because that helps you. Now, mental health related, yes, but I just think if we're more open about these conditions, then we're going to work together and go, does this help you?
Absolutely.
Rather than going, you know, on the tech and having an anxiety attack, and then also going, what's wrong? And then discovering, oh, it's a mental health issue. And I just think talking about it, like all of these things, can only do good things.
Well, with people like you out there, dear Andrew, you'll see. We hopefully see a sea change. You see, I think that it goes all the way back to drama school as well. I think there has to be.
Oh, yes, it does.
There really has to be in-house counsellors. And as I say, the MTA are trying to get a charter sorted where you have counsellors at every drama school. People need help, particularly coming from wherever they are around England, well, the world, to come to an institution where there's all these new people, there's all this stress put on you to look good, to achieve, to dance, to do the splits after being pissed the night before. It takes its toll on you mentally. So I there needs to be some kind of support there as well. And another thing that I was speaking to a dear friend of mine recently after I went through a bit of a struggle myself, and he said to me, an interesting thing for all self-employed people is that you have to find happiness when you're not doing the thing that you really want to do. So say if you're a director or say a producer like me and you're in between projects, etc., you have to have something that makes you happy. You have to have other projects. You have to find work that you can do between your acting jobs, say if you're an actor or directing, that actually fulfills you. Or you write, or you go to workshops, or you go to the gym. You surround yourselves by people that make you feel good.
And some of these things don't have to cost the earth.
No.
I mean, one particular friend of mine, exactly what you were saying, exactly what you were just saying, was having a very blue few months, and he's the most extraordinary photographer.
Yes.
Most extraordinary photographer. And I said, well, why not do your photography?
Yeah.
Which ordinarily made him happy, but the problem is because of his depression. He had lost the get up and go.
Yes.
He had lost the desire to help himself.
Yes.
And it was so interesting. Again, going back to one of the previous episodes with Pete Gallagher, just talking about sometimes it really is important that people seek out professional help.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're finding yourself not being able to get up in the morning and you're spending days in bed, or you're grieving, or you're dealing with, as I certainly do, I mean, talking about drama schools, I'm going to choose not to talk about my experience of mental health at drama school because it was appalling. At both the two I went to, absolutely appalling and totally unprofessional, to the point that I do sometimes consider taking it further. The most extraordinary thing is where just asking for that help, I think, just being able to go to the doctor and say, I think I have depression.
Absolutely.
And not having any shame in that. And I think people worry, they go, I'm going to be put on medication and antidepressants and I'm going to end up, losing all my creative ability. Well, the mental health
will help you find yourself again.
I hope so.
Absolutely, you're right. Being open and asking for help, and also knowing that people do go through hard times. Everyone does, I do believe, and not to be ashamed of that. Not to be ashamed if you haven't got the motivation. As you say, go and find the help, because it is there for you. There are actually counsellors and therapists out there that work and specialise in the performing arts industry.
They certainly do.
They really do. So if you go onto Google, do a little search, performing arts therapists or counsellors, and you can find lots of wonderful names and contacts out there. And I must say, from the bottom of my heart, I find it's so inspirational when I see young actors and young directors trying to make it in this industry, when money is so tight in London. I think, personally, if you are living in London and you're pursuing a dream and you're trying to do something that is not normal, like acting, and directing, they're not bloody normal, are they, dear? But if you're trying to do that, you're being successful, dear. You're following a path that you really want to do and you're passionate about. So don't be hard on yourself, because it is hard. Be proud. I think you should give yourself a big pat on the back, because you're trying to do something that's hard. But in the long term, the rewards will be wonderful for you. So I take my hats off to all of you.
Here. I couldn't agree with you more, Webb. Well, everybody, what do you think? I'd love to hear what your experiences are. You can get in touch. You can either tweet me using the handle @AndrewKeats, or tweet the show using @ShowPeopleUK or #ShowPeoplePodcast. You can send me an email to info@arian-productions.com, or, and this is what I really suggest you do, visit the Show People Facebook page, where you can also find the Show People listeners group, and that's at facebook.com/Show People Podcast. After every episode, I always post something connected with the issues that are raised in the show. Perhaps if you are involved in a mental health charity or any experiences that you've had that really helped you, please do post it there, and hopefully you can share that with other listeners of the show.
Hi, this is David Bedella, and you're listening to the Show People Podcast with Andrew Keats.
Thank you, Mr. Bedella.
Oh, he has a lovely voice, doesn't he? But that's not his actual voice. If you actually meet him, he talks like that.
He's actually falsetto.
He just puts that on. You'll see, my dear. It's quite fun, isn't it?
I'd love to hear him sing The Snowman, perhaps.
Yes, precisely. Yes.
Marvellous. So, So let's talk to West End producer. Where did West End producer grow up?
Oh, well, my dear, going back, I was born North London, you see. Actually, I was born on stage during a particularly bloody production of Titus Andronicus. My parents were both very keen in the amateur dramatic circuit, you see, and my mother thought she had at least another 2 hours to get through the performance, but suddenly I popped out, and there I was. There was an audience there were lights, there was sound, and my first words were, "Hello, Dolly." But yes, so I was brought into this wonderful, supportive, fun family. My dad was a cross-dresser. He did panto every year, playing such coveted roles as Dame Theresa May, Sarah the cook, and, ugly sister Elaine Page, all those kind of things. So he was quite remarkable in his field. And my mother, oh, my dear, wonderful mother, one of the most beautiful, beautiful women you could ever meet. She was actually the most, the butchest Maria von Trapp that you could ever see. It was through them, you see, I used to help Dad make his costumes, I used to help darn his clothes, and I used to help Mummy dear with her weight training. It was a wonderful house, and we used to have friends coming around where we'd all sing and doing musical theatre songs from Carousel, etc. It was a wonderful upbringing, and I've always stayed North London, and now I find myself around. I won't tell you specifically, but it's the Hampstead area of London, which is beautiful, lovely, and my home, and where I go walking at 2 a.m. in the morning to meet my boys if ever I get lonely. Yes, it's a wonderful place to be.
And before we get into entering the business, I mean, what was school like for you? Were you ever badly bullied? Is that how you discovered?
Oh yes, I was voted the most likely to be queer, dear. It was every playtime. There was me and my dear friend Timmy, and dear me and Timmy, we'd walk around with our little shorts, and we'd recite show tunes and talk about dear Judy Garland and Marilyn Monroe and the shows we'd like to see in town. You see, we used to go on trips together. I remember seeing, was it Tommy Steele in Cinderella at the Coliseum? I think that was 1958. And what else was there? Oh, and, all these old wonderful productions. The Pajama Game, I remember seeing that, which I think actually was the one that was directed by Jerome Robbins. I think, and what a remarkable, with Max Wall in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, seeing those wonderful things in the 1960s, etc., and then being able to discuss those with dear Timmy. Wonderful times, wonderful times. I was never any good at sports. I was always the last one chosen, of course. I was never good with shuttles or cocks until I got a lot older, my dear. So, and when I was far too young to experience and express that at that age. So, yes, I was bullied. But my one way of surviving, of getting through it, was theatre, was losing myself, because I find theatre, some people say they get lost in films and television, but for me, I find theatre such an individual experience. Even though you're experiencing it with a whole audience, you're lost. You're focused on these brilliant people in front of you, this fake world, as it were. And that's what I love about theatre, when it's clear that it's not real. Mm-hmm. I mean, these realistic performances that are a bit doomy and gloomy. I want jazz hands, my dear. I want tits, teeth, I want makeup, I want big lights, and I want to see at least 2 splits halfway, in the show, because it's fun, isn't it, my dear? It's about keeping us entertained and making us forget about Donald Trump and Brexit and things like that.
We will continue to explore Web's life, especially looking at how he entered the business. But before we do that, it's now time for Dramatic News. Today's top stories. Chicago will return to the West End next year. Based on the play by Maureen Dallas Watkins, has a book by Fred Ebb and Bob Fosse, music by John Kander and lyrics by Fred Ebb. This run will be based on the UK and internationally touring production. Casting is yet to be announced, and Chicago runs at the Phoenix Theatre from the 26th of March 2018. Earlier this week, the Royal Court Theatre and Out of Joint released a joint statement following the sexual assault allegations against director Max Stafford Clark. stating that the company would no longer be running its production of Rita, Sue and Bob 2. However, Royal Court Artistic Director Vicky Featherstone has reversed the decision, writing, "I know that we are nothing without the voices and trust of our writers. This is the guiding principle on which the theatre was founded and on which it continues to be run. I have therefore been rocked to the core by accusations of censorship and the banning of a working-class female voice. For that reason, I have invited the current out-of-joint production of Rita, Sue and Bob 2 back to the Royal Court for its run. As a result of this helpful public debate, we are now confident that the context with which Dunbar's play will be viewed will be an invitation for new conversations. Performance dates and times will remain the same, and tickets will go on sale from Thursday the 21st of December at noon. There will be post-show talks after the performances to be announced." A major £14 million redevelopment of West Yorkshire Playhouse has been given the green light by Leeds City Council. The revamp will create a third performance space, a studio that will be used to develop new artists, as well as transform the Playhouse's entrance hall, improve accessibility and replace outdated equipment and infrastructure. The plans have now been approved by the council, with Arts Council England also confirming a total grant of £6.6 million towards the landmark project. The local authority has been given £4.4 million, with £3 million coming from the theatre's own resources and fundraising activity. They will continue to stage work throughout the construction by temporarily turning a workshop space into a 350-seat pop-up performance area. The work is due for completion in 2019. Have you got something that you think the Show People podcast should know about? Well, please just email info@arian-productions.com and we'll do our very best to share your story with our listeners.
Hi, this is Annette Badland, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
Thank you, Dame Badland. So, Web, when did you enter the business? What were your early days?
I got involved in a production of My Fair Lady, just ASMing, helping backstage, which incidentally, not to go off tack, but I worked at lots of old rep theatres in the day, Chelmsford, etc., where people really used to earn their craft and learn everything. You used to learn how to work backstage. I was even thrown on stage a couple of times, with the book when an actor was ill. But actors learnt everything there. They learnt how to work backstage, how to stage manage, how to act, about accounts, about lighting, and that was the training in those days. And it is such a shame, I think, that these days rep systems, apart from a couple, I mean, luckily there's Chester now and Liverpool, I think it's wonderful, are coming back, but they've all died, unfortunately, and that was how some of our greatest actors existed. And I must say to your wonderful listeners, I think we are very blessed to have some of the finest actors in the world in our country, but the actors who are extraordinary, who were the dying breeds, like Judi Dench and Ian McKellen, Beatrix Stewart, and those people who worked from tiny parts at the RSC and worked their way up slowly to playing the leading roles and then did their movie careers. These times, in present day, it tends to be the other way around, you see. Those people, if you can, go and see them, because there's not many of them left. And they really know how to do it, top of their craft.
And there really is an unparalleled bias towards the greatest stars of our generations. They are all rep actors.
Yes, absolutely.
And rather beautifully, they're not all higher or middle class backgrounds.
No.
There are plenty of people that come from, staunch working class backgrounds,
Absolutely.
worked their way up through rep, and now you look at them, they're now some of our most successful actors.
Ian
I agree.
McKellen.
Patrick Stewart,
all from up north, you see. And now, of course, they got rid of their lovely twangs, didn't they? But they really worked their way up. And you see, the interesting thing is, like Ian, dear Ian McKellen, speaking to him recently, he is just passionate about theatre and theatre history. Yes, he's a film star, but that is what he loves. That's why he does it, because he loves theatre and his stories about being backstage and being entranced by performances. So that's how I got involved when I was doing, I got asked to do work in rep, and I cherish that, because I do believe that if you get offered work, you should do anything to experience, to watch from the wings. That's how you can learn. And then I was asked to be an ASM on a tour of My Fair Lady, where Eliza really I could not have danced all night. She was bloody awful. And I watched that and said, I could put on a much better production than that, you see. So I did. I waited a few months and mounted another little production of it, where
where was
Eliza
that?
could dance on it. Well, it was a little tour doing the provinces, my dear. But it wasn't a big budget thing, but it just did well. It was far superior. It was about having people in it who were passionate about it and who could do the job. And from there, I just worked again in some rep theatres, helping put some shows on in various theatres up and down the country, and then came back to London, you see, and have been involved in helping shows, investing shows, and helping put shows on, co-producing, etc. Some shows. Obviously, I can't tell you which ones, my dear, because then you'll know that I'm Nika Barnes. But more recently, of course, I love doing the talents shows, as it were, looking for the new talents of the future, like the Twitter star, where a lot of our winners are now in the West End working, which is wonderful, and composer star, helping the new composers of the future, which is something I know you do as well,
Absolutely.
isn't it, dear?
In fact, actually, we should compare our address books and make sure that all those guys that did the Search for a Composer Star, that we feature their music on the Show People podcast. We'll do that together.
Yes, I got over 100 of them that entered, and they're wonderful.
Oh, we should definitely do that. Are you going to be doing any more contests?
I aim to do one next year, yes. Again, hopefully at the Soho with... I did it with someone called Michael Peavoy last time, so hopefully with him. Nice man, yes.
Well, let me know if you need any help. I'll be delighted.
Thank you, my dear.
Help.
Yes, well, I don't need help. Just 20,000 will do.
Sure, I'll see. I think I've got some down the back of my sofa.
Wonderful.
somewhere.
I can. Yes, that will double the amount. Well done, dear.
So, what advice would you have for producers that are just starting out? I know the industry's changed since you started, but what were the kinds of things you did to, raise money and put those shows like My Fair Lady on?
Yes, well, you need to, first of all, immerse yourself in theatre. Immerse yourself in it. I mean, as we know, Andrew, putting on any show these days is expensive. A new play, something, 400,000 or 500,000 just to start it up in town. New musical would start from, I'd say, 3 or 4 million, really, with the big ones we're talking about. Of course, off West End, it's still expensive, as you know, which is why it's hard to make sure everyone gets paid all the time when putting on those productions. As young producers, I've talked to lots of young producers, actually. One thing I would say is existing producers will help. They like talking about how they got to where they got to. Write to them, call them, send emails asking for help, support, just advice. Lots of producers and big producing companies, say even ATG or the really useful Cameron Mackintosh, etc., do have interns. Even if you're just on the front desk answering calls, you'll get to see how the world of producing works.
Well, look at the wonderful Paul Taylor Mills, for example.
Precisely.
Started as a receptionist, you won't mind me saying, started as a receptionist at Cameron's, and then he got introduced to me when I was very young, starting out by Anthony Drew.
Yes.
Who I was doing Just So, and Paul, I think, had produced one of his first shows, which was Honk.
Yes, right.
And now look at him, the wonderful successes as artistic director of The Other Palace. And that started from a reception desk at Cameron's, and he's very proud of that, and so he should be.
Yes, well, there you are. That's precisely my point. One should not be ashamed of starting there, because it's the connections you make, it's the people you make. Also, I must say, do have a look online at Stage One, that they are a training scheme that supports young producers via workshops, financially as well, and it's they offer various different courses, but a lot of now, what is it? They did have a new queue. What were they called, those producers? Celador, yes, they all started with Stage One, and they've done so well, you see. And there's lots of people that have started through them who are now commercial producers or based at theatres up and down the country. So get in contact with Stage One, and don't be afraid to ask for advice from existing producers. In terms of getting investment for shows, be canny. Ask anybody. Ask whoever. If you're at a family wedding, see if people are involved in theatre. If you have rich friends, ask them if they have. And you always have to be honest and say you may not get a return, but if you say even get £1,000 from 10 of your friends, there's your first fringe theatre production financed.
Absolutely.
So you'll have to ask anybody, and don't be afraid to ask. For every 20 people you ask, you will only get 15 people who hit you and throw things at you. 5 may give you some money. So be cheeky, I would say. That's what I had to do.
And what have been some of your biggest flops? What have been the shows that sadly, failed or closed that perhaps you learnt the most from?
Well, I did a very ill-timed pantomime back in the day, Sarah the Cook, it was called, and it was a look at her life. And I think I tried to take it too deep. It was a bit like, I suppose, a depressed The Great British Bake Off, and it was there that I realised that panto should be fun and not about Sarah the Cook dribbling, crying into her lovely marshmallow pies. Mm-hmm. So a big mistake was made there, but I recouped it the following year with a joyous panto of Aladdin, which was a remarkable success. But I suddenly realised then that one should always avoid employing buttons over the age of 35 because they do look like something of a pervert when they go out with the newly graduated 17-year-old from Sylvia Young. But of course, we've all had flops. Look at dear Cameron with Moby and Dick. A wonderful idea, but, it just didn't work. But, I must say, flops are wonderful things as well, because they know you learn from them, and you very quickly learn how to make yourself stiff again. And the next time you get stiff, you will get stiff for longer, and your show will remain a hit for much longer, because you've learnt from your mistakes. What is that thing from Chitty Chitty Gang Bang? Every job that must... Oh, no, that's Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins.
No. Up from the ashes grow the roses of success.
Yes.
Those wise words of Pinter there, my dear, you see, telling you to fail, 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 and one day you will be able to suck some seeds.
Hello, this is Kim Ismay, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats, and I hope you're having a wickedly interesting time.
It's time for the Show People platform, which brings you a composer or playwright that you may not necessarily have heard of. However, we've now decided to broaden our horizons at the Show People podcast and now open this section up to anybody that has something related to our business that they would like to share and would appreciate some exposure. Perhaps you have a new album coming out that you'd like to share a song from, maybe a scene from your play, or a composition from your best opus. And today's platform is given to Meredith Braun and her latest solo album, When Love Is Gone. The title from the release comes from the Paul Williams song Meredith performed in the iconic film The Muppet Christmas Carol, which celebrates its 25th anniversary this year. Meredith's new 2017 recording of When Love Is Gone marks the first time she's performed the song since recording the original version for the 1992 film soundtrack. When Love Is Gone takes the form of a narrative song cycle based around both specially selected material and original songs. The material features ranges from musical theatre to singer-songwriter ballads brought together by Meredith's own self-penned and elegantly crafted musical arrangements. Written and recorded between November 2016 and July 2017, the album highlights Braun's musicality, not just as a performer, but also as a musician and writer, as she embraces a wide range of musical styles and genres across the recording. Meredith is also accompanied on the cello by her son, 13-year-old Tiger Braun-White, who is a student at the Royal Academy of Music. Here's Meredith Braun singing When Love Is Gone.
That was a mouthful, wasn't it, dear?
There was a time when I was sure that you and I were truly one, that our future was forever and would never come undone. And we came so close to being close, and though you cared for me, there's distance in your eyes tonight, so we're not meant to be. The love is gone, the love is gone. The sweetest dream that you have ever known. The love is gone, the love is gone. I wish you well, but I must leave you now alone. There comes a moment in your life, like a window, and you see your future there before you, and how perfect life can be. But adventure calls with unknown voices, pulling you away. Be careful, or you may regret the choice you make someday. When love is gone, when love is gone, the sweetest dream that we have ever known. When love is gone, when love is gone. I wish you well, but I must leave you now alone. It was almost love. It was almost always. It was like a fairy tale. We'd live out, you and I. And yes, some dreams come true. And yes, some dreams fall through. And yes, the time has come for us to say goodbye. Yes, some dreams come true. And yes, some dreams fall through. And yes, the time has come for us to say goodbye.
Oh, I adore that song, and I was so upset because The Muppet Christmas Carol and The Nightmare Before Christmas are my favourite two Christmas films, and MT geeks will realise that song was cut from various versions of the song, so I'm delighted to hear it coming back. If you'd like to find out more about Meredith Braun and her album, please just visit www.stagedoorrecords.com, where all the information about how you can purchase your copy of her album will be available there, along with other releases.
A beautiful Christmas song there, dear, isn't it? From those Christmas films, like you were saying. You see, my favourite Christmas film of all time has to be Free Willy. I love it. And whilst I have you, I must say, I'm going to get a little recording across to you so you can play on one of your future episodes some of the hits from my new show and also some of the shits. My new show I'm putting together with dear Cameron after his flop of Moby Dick of Free Willy. There's some instant classics in there, like My Willy Needs More Water. Where is my Willy? Willy, please don't go away from me. Why is my Willy wet? I shall get them over to you, my dear. Yes, it's wonderful. Maybe, in fact, I'll get in contact with a few people that you've had on here to see if they can sing them for me.
I'd be delighted. I'll direct it. I'd be delighted to
Excellent.
direct.
Free Willy the musical in 2018.
Coming to Whitley Bay.
Coming to Whitley Bay and the Palladium some point in the future, dear.
This is Kumiko Mendel, Artistic Director of Yellow Earth Theatre. You are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
Now, many will know your literary skills by following you on Twitter and your regular contributions to the stage, but some may not realise that you've also written two books. One back in 2013 called Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Acting But Were Too Afraid to Ask, Dear. And last month you published, thanks to Nick Hern Books, your second book, which has been eagerly anticipated, called Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Going to the Theatre But Were Too Sloshed to Ask, Dear. I was reading the book this morning, laughing out loud to the point where the other half came in and said, "What are you watching?" I said, "I'm not watching anything, I'm reading."
Oh, excellent. Wonderful.
Let's tell me a little bit about this new book, please, Wet.
Yes, well, this book chronicles everything about what it is like to go to the theatre, because as everyone who has ever been or has ever thought about going to the theatre knows, it is a perilous quest. Anything can happen. You see, my first book was for everybody working backstage, the actors, etc. This point and this book is for those in front of the curtain, the audience members. Now, going to a theatre can be very tricky. First of all, you need to know the difference between a theatre and a cinema, or a theatre and a swimming pool, and that can be the first big hurdle that many people fall and flop at. Then it's booking your tickets. Now, if you're going to the theatre, you need to make sure you're booking the ticket for the right play. You know, there's no point booking a ticket for the Lion King in Soho when you actually want to go and see the Lion King. So you have to do your research. So I tell people how to book their tickets, and hopefully we'll save them money in there. What to do when you get to the theatre, you know, how to get to your seats. Do you get there early? Do you get on all fours and ask everyone to lift their legs? Where is the best place to sit? You know, if you're watching, say, if you're watching 50 Shades of Grey with Elaine Page and Russell Grant, the best thing is a restricted view seat, isn't it, dear? So, but if you're going to see something else that you really want to see what's going on, then I would recommend a stall seat or dress circle, or circle, of course, depending on what kind of view and whose bald head you want to see. How to get to the toilets quickly in the interval, you know, where to sit, how to get to the bar, and how to leave if a show is rubbish, shrubbish. And we also, my dear, look at the West End, and we look at all the different theatres in London's West End and the fringe theatres. It's all done through a rather fun way that will tell you and aid you in your quest for the theatre. Also, of course, sorry to interrupt, my dear,
not at all.
you can become one of my official theatre prefects.
That's what I was just going to ask. So
Yes.
this is about what Kim Ismay sort of affectionately called in a previous episode theatricate, and how audience members should behave in the theatre. So just take us through some of the things that you really want audience members to be doing now, thanks to this book.
Well, put your bloody mobile phone away, dear. You're in a bloody theatre. Stop tweeting, stop going on Facebook, and stop swiping right at Grindr. You can do that at the end, dear. Maybe the men to your right may be more attractive anyway, my dear. So turn off those things. It's bad for fellow audience members, and also bad for the dear actors on stage, because it lights your face up, my dear, and you look like a ghost. So stop doing that. Stop eating noisy food. Now, of course, dear Nika is saying that people should now be allowed to eat in theatres, of course. Well, I don't disagree with that, but you just have to be considerate, don't you? If you're having sweets, make sure the packet's open so that you're not rustling every time you're going into it. It also allows Doris 2 seats away to help herself as well. And sharing is caring, isn't it, Andrew? You know. So that's another little thing. Talking when the show has started. Don't talk, my dear. The actors are trying to perform, particularly if you're going to see some Hollywood stars. They mumble so much. With any distraction from someone else talking will just put everybody off, won't it, my dear?
And you also have, so when you purchase the book from Nick Hern Books, you actually get sent a very special, which I'm wearing now and will wear proudly on a blazer, I promise.
It's wonderful on your left nipple, dear.
It's
perfect.
It's a little...
straddling it perfectly.
So you can get your theatre prefect badge and book.
Yes.
Now, there was another part of the book which I really enjoyed, which I was going through the potted histories of various shows.
Yes, that's right. There's lots of silly histories.
I mean, they're absolutely glorious. I mean, it's not just a book for somebody who perhaps hasn't been to the theatre. I think it's something that people who love the theatre would really enjoy.
It really is. It's for everybody. I mean, look, like, here you go, in Starlight Express, there's silly potted histories, and my favourite bits are the rejected songs at the end.
Yes.
So we know what songs are in Starlight Express, Only You, Uncoupled, etc. The rejected songs were Pizza Express, Which Carriage is the Buffet In? This performance is delayed due to hazardous weather conditions. Overcrowded. The fat controllers lost a lot of weight. No train in this show is a virgin. So, yes, we look at, I think, 20 different shows in there. So it really is for people that know theatre. They can read it with a smug grin on their face going, yes, I know exactly what he's talking about.
I had the same thing. I'm just picking out one of my favourite bits on between pages 118 and 119. Yes. Typical directors still have to give out my my page numbers. My favourite was how you explain how directors work. Of course, yes. So you talk about the RD, resident director, or ropey director.
Well, that's true. Let's be honest.
Yes, which is. Would you mind reading just what you think of the ropey director on page 119 for me?
Yes, my dear. Well, this person often used to be an actor, but couldn't hack the bad pay, endless auditioning, lack of independence, and feeling of no self-worth. So they became a resident director instead, and ended up feeling exactly the same. Resident directors stay with a show once it has opened, attempting to make it as good and fresh as it was on opening night. If it was fresh and good on opening night, dear. If it was old and tired, then they have to keep it that way. The resident director's job is tricky, because if they change anything or add their own ideas, then they get severely beaten up by the original director.
You have no idea how absolutely true that is, and I'm sure there are listeners chuckling away. Rather than taking our words for it, listeners, I would like you to imagine it's Christmas Day, you've opened all your presents, and thankfully you found Web's book in your stocking. You're exhausted from opening all those Michael Ball and Kerry Ellis CDs. You've had an enormous Christmas lunch, but sadly, those Hamilton tickets weren't there. So instead, you grab Web's book, grab a glass of bubbles by a roaring fire, cue fire, and here's an excerpt from Web's book all about Hamilton.
My dears, do make yourself comfortable. Hamilton. History, the most exciting musical to have been written in years, looking at a very important time in political history. Everyone says this show has changed the theatrical landscape, and I'm inclined to agree. The plot. A sung and rapped musical about the tumultuous life of Neil Hamilton, the founding father of fame-hungry politicians, and his indomitable wife, Christine. The show starts when Neil is elected the Conservative MP for Tatton and a Tory whip in the 1980s. The song The Room Where It Happens, under Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. The song Helpless, whom he supports during her doomed leadership battle. The song Cabinet Battle. He later becomes Minister of Deregulation and Corporate Affairs for John Major. The song My Shot. Hamilton was an advocate of such policies as shutting down coal mines. The song History Has Its Eyes on You. And he opposed the removal of lead in petrol. The song Burn. The musical then follows Hamilton's political downfall in 1996, the song Stay Alive, in the Cash for Questions scandal, the song We Know, where he asked questions in the House of Commons in return for brown envelopes stuffed with cash from Mohammed El-Fayed, the song Hurricane. Act 1 ends as Neil loses his Tatton seat to journalist Martin Bell. The song The Election of 1997. Act 2 follows the Hamilton's quest for Z-list celebrity status, the song You'll Be Back, as they appear on a Louis Theroux documentary, the song Dear Theroux, where Christine famously flirts with Louis the song The Erection of 2001, and they make numerous awkward PR appearances. The song Say No to This, including Christine's appearance on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, the song Wait for It. Neil joins UKIP, the song Blow Us All Away, and then gets voted the leader of their Welsh Assembly group, the song Meet Me Inside, before the rousing final number, Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Wants to Buy a Question. It may be worth mentioning that there's also another musical with the same name about the American founding father, Alexander Hamilton, but I don't really know much about that one, dear.
Brilliant. Absolutely, absolutely brilliant. Now, it is Christmas, so it is time for a Show People podcast giveaway. That's right. Well, for those of you who are big fans of West End producer, I have a specially signed copy of Web's latest book, which he will personalise especially for you. And all you have to do is visit the Show People Twitter account. That's at Show People UK. And at the top of the feed, you will find a pinned tweet with this episode. All you need to do is retweet that pinned tweet with the West End Producer episode, follow at West End Producer and at Show People UK, and one of you lucky buggers will win a signed copy of Web's latest book.
Hello, this is Steve First, and you are listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. A man so marvellous, he's putting bums on seats. Whether it be parakeets eating halal meats or premier athletes submitting VAT receipts. It's the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
Well, it's time now for Whitley Bay Discs, a chance to discover a few of my guests' favourite things. So, Webb, if I stranded you on tour at Whitley Bay, what would be the album you would take with you?
Well, it's the first album of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, where Tim Rice played Pharaoh, simply to hear that man's dulcet tones and laugh myself asleep every single night.
and what would be the film?
The film? Oh, well, that's an interesting one, isn't it? What film? Probably, I need to think. Oh, probably, just because I adore it, The Lady Killers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I love all those old Ealing comedies.
Me too.
I think they're just wonderful. And they work theatrically, they work on film, they're something of their time, they really are.
Did you see The Lady Killers when it was on in the West End?
I did. I thought they did a wonderful production, very faithful as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
I totally agree. And what would be the book?
The book, well, I think, I must say, it would probably be something by that wonderful, world-renowned writer, raconteur, theatrical impresario.
I know where this is going.
Everything you always wanted to know about going to the theatre, but were too sloshed to ask, dear, by West End producer, my dear. He's wonderful. He uses lots of long words, you know.
And what would be the play?
The play? Well, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Well, I'll tell you something. It's a current play.
Mm-hmm.
It's one that I saw at Edinburgh this year, and then transferred to the Park Theatre, and it had a profound effect on me. I must say, the play I would take is The Revlon Girl. It's had a profound effect on me. I still think about it to this day, about the Aberfan coal mining colliery spill disaster in 1966, where I forget the number, but lots of children and staff in a school all died and were crushed when a colliery spill fell down a local a hill that was near the school. There was recently an anniversary of it. I forget what anniversary it was, but it's beautifully put together. It was wonderfully acted, and it just has a wonderful sense of humanity, warmth, what it feels like to lose someone, grief, loss, but positivity. It was so well done, and I sincerely hope that more people get a chance to see it. It doesn't happen when you see something that really moves you very often.
I know how sincere you are. I mean, you messaged me to go and see it, and sadly I couldn't. And now, there must have been about 8 or 9 colleagues and friends who have said to me, you must have seen it. I'm sure, or I pray that it is coming back.
Yes.
But, the Park Theatre, I mean, look, I'm a bit biased. Yes, I did Chinglish and some other bits and pieces there. But funny enough, I was there a couple of nights ago seeing Daisy Pulls It Off.
Yes, of course.
Which you would think, Daisy Pulls It Off?
Yes.
Have we not seen enough productions of that? But you know what? It's a age, gender, and colourblind production.
Yes.
I've got Pauline McGlynn, who is obviously Mrs. Doyle in Father Ted, in it. It was a joy. If anyone doesn't fancy Panto, go and see Daisy Pulls It Off at the Park. That theatre is just going from strength to strength. I absolutely adore it.
Excellent advice, dear. Excellent.
What would be your musical? So I know you've said you want to take the cast recording of Tim and Joseph. What would be the any other musical that you'd like to take with you?
Well, there's too many, isn't there, my dear? There's far too many. Do you know what? I recall a wonderful time. Yes, it would possibly. I'm going to have 2. One would be the original My Fair Lady with Rex and dear Julie, which I saw at the Drury Lane. Wonderful, one of the highlights. And, of course, the other one would be 2 different recordings of Cabaret, because it's a remarkable film. It would be the film version.
And Alan Cumming?
And Alan Cumming.
I knew you were going to say.
Yes, I saw it extraordinary. I saw it at the Donby. I saw it at Studio 54 with dear Natasha as well. It was absolutely one of the finest performances I've seen. And as a musical, I think it's the way it deals with it's so subversive. It's an important piece. It's always been one of my favourites.
It's the first musical I ever directed as a very young, very naive director. It's funny you say that. So in my study around the corner, I have a signed autograph of Rex Harrison, which came from the original Broadway board, which I treasure just because I know he was an intolerable shit of a man. And indeed, if you want a great laugh, read his autobiography, which has long since been deleted. But as a man, there are some things he does which are just absolutely beautiful. Dr. Dolittle, for example, is beautiful. And what you say about Alan Cumming in Cabaret, I mean, those orchestrations, that production, and that ending, they're just children.
Yeah.
They're just children.
Yes.
You hear that ringing through the streets, and now you see the supremacists in this country in America rising, and you think, God, I wish I could take everyone to go and see Cabaret.
I agree entirely, my dear. Yes.
And last part of your Whitley Bay discs, what would be your luxury item?
Well, I think just to keep me amused, it would be my Andrew Lloyd Webber glove puppet. That means I would never be lonely, and dear Andy Pandy could keep me company.
I don't doubt. Well, it's now time for our sponsors, and in my opinion, the best accountants in the entertainment industry. Over to Alex and the team at Theatre Counts HQ.
Hi, I'm Alex from Theatre Counts. We're a friendly team of accountants who work with clients in the entertainment industry. It's our mission to make tax simple. We offer a no jargon, simple approach with no hidden fees. Here's my tax tip of the week. You may have heard of the dreaded words tax payments on account. They can be very confusing and offer a real shock when completing your tax return. They are also very difficult to explain. If your tax liability is over £1,000, HMRC expect you to pay payments on account for the following year's tax bill. So, your tax to pay at the end of the year might be a lot more expensive than you expected, as it also includes half on account for the following year. You also have to pay the remaining half in the following July. So, the important tip to remember is that if you've earned less the following year, you can choose to reduce the payments accordingly. As I said, it's all very difficult to explain, so if you need any help, please feel free to get in touch. We are proud and privileged to be the first sponsors of the Show People podcast, which we love to listen to. If you'd like to chat with us or to join us as a client, you can contact us via our website, which is www.theatrecounts.co.uk, and you can also follow us on Twitter at theatrecounts. If you're a new client to us, we'll even give you a £50 discount off your first year fee. Just quote the Show People podcast.
Thanks, Alex. And I really do sincerely mean this, and not just because Alex is a sponsor. The reason Alex is a sponsor is he and his team are just the nicest group of people ever, and indeed to look after my books, you would assume people would just be horrible with the mess that I send them every year. But I had pretty much zero knowledge when I left drama school about what I needed to do as a self-employed person, and if it wasn't for theatre accounts, I really don't know what I would do, both with my accounts and indeed with Arian's accounts. So listeners, you've got until the 31st of January 2018 to get your tax return in. If this is news to you, or like me when I left drama school, you're just burying your head in the sand and pretending, no, I don't want to know about tax returns, or I haven't done enough of them, they've built up and I'm going to get penalties. Honestly, contact Alex and the team. I had masses of problems with my books by not getting them in. They went through all the ones that I needed to do before. They helped me with the various fees and things. And most importantly, they really do help me sleep at night, knowing that everything is done properly and they're so reasonable. So yes, get in touch with Alex and the team at Theatre Cats.
Hi, I'm Alexis Gerard and you're listening to the Show People podcast with the brilliant Andrew Keats. And I mean that, and not just because he slipped me a cheeky 20.
So it's now time for another Show People challenge.
Oh, wonderful.
Now, this is what we call Funny 5 Minutes,
Oh,
which
dear.
is probably our most popular part of the show.
I tend to have a funny few hours every day, dear. It's my age, I think, my dear.
Well, looking at the West End, there's been a funny few seasons as well.
National. No, what?
So, Web, I am going to ask you a series of questions over just under 5 minutes.
Yes.
You have to answer as many as possible. You are allowed 3 passes, so use them wisely.
I'm allowed 3 passes.
3 passes in total.
Okay.
Web, let's play a festive edition of Funny 5 Minutes. Web, what is the best Christmas gift you've ever received?
A green musical theatre Shrek dildo.
Who is the best reindeer?
The one at the back.
What's your Christmas tipple?
Oh, Dom Perignon, my dear. Vintage 1933.
And what's the most expensive thing you've ever bought?
Oh, a house.
And if you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
That's an interesting one. Invisibility.
Why is that?
So I can carve.
I knew you were going to say that. Where is the strangest place you've had a wee?
I'm trying to think the strangest place I've had a wee.
Yes.
Not the strangest person I've had a wee on.
No, that's Donald
The
Trump.
strangest place I've had a wee... Oh, I don't know, pass.
That's a pass. If someone narrated your life, who would it be?
Liza Minnelli.
What is your favourite sport?
Oh, well, that must be rugby, my dear. All those scrums.
What is your favourite television show?
Oh, that's an interesting one, isn't it, my dear? The Channel 4 News.
What is the best ingredient as part of a Christmas dinner?
Stuffing.
Stuffing. What's the lie about you that you've always wanted to clear up?
That I suffer with a micro-penis condition. I don't. Mine's very large, thank you.
That's another producer who comes to mind immediately.
Yes.
What would your autobiography be called?
Who, what, why, where, and when.
Do you have a favourite Disney film? If so, what is it?
Oh, yes, I think it's The Lion King, my dear, I love it.
Who is your crush now?
My crush now? Oh, well, he's sitting opposite me right at this moment.
Oh, I'm fanning myself, as you say.
Yeah.
If you could visit any point in history, what would it be and why?
It would be any point in history. It would be... Oh, I don't know, my dear. Oh, yes, it would be Donald. It would be when Donald Trump's running for president, and I'd get him through and somehow stop it.
I totally agree. Famous Show People podcast question now. Would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Oh, 100 duck-sized horses, dear. I could kick them. Mm-hmm. I could get some little people to ride them. I could put them in a little playpen and dress them all up as characters from Sweeney Todd or something.
It's an old duck production of Sweeney Todd. I love it. How many pairs of shoes do you own?
Oh, I'd say at least 2.
What is your least favourite word?
Moist sponge.
And what is your favourite word?
Oh, favourite word? Kinky. And dear, of course.
How do you like your eggs in the morning?
Poached, please, with a bit of avocado.
What's the most delicious thing you can cook?
I can cook. Thai green curry, my dear.
And who is your favourite doctor from Doctor Who?
It's Christopher Eccleston, actually. I think he's good.
What is the best children's show?
The best children's show? Macbeth.
Well, I'm very, very, very sad to say that is all the time that we have left.
What, have we finished?
We've finished already? But before we go, thank you to Stage Door Records and Meredith Braun, to our sponsor, theatrical, and of course, he deserves nothing short of a standing ovation for the one, the only West End producer.
Thank you for having me, my dear. It's been a joy. I've been aroused for the last 2 hours, and I'm going to be aroused until at least the new year.
I'm delighted that I brought a smile to your face at the least.
Bless you,
well, how can people keep up to date with all you're up to?
By buying my book, we've mentioned that, by following me on Twitter, which is at West End Producer, also by my website, which is www.westendproducer.co.uk, or by going out in central London. You'll find me in the Ivy, Groucho's, or Victoria Station public toilets.
Some of my favourite haunts.
Yes.
This podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. If you love the podcast, or if you are generous enough to support the work we do, then please, please, please visit www.arianproductions.com/showpeople. We have had nearly 4,000 downloads, but sadly very, very few donations. So it is Christmas. Why not send us a little Christmas present and help us fund next year's series of the Show People podcast, and of course help Arian Productions do more for theatre makers. Anything you can give will be hugely, hugely appreciated. You can also help by giving us an iTunes review, as that helps with those algorithms to help us reach more passionate people about performing arts and their craft. Lastly, do get in touch if you've got any comments, ideas, things you want to see on the show, or people you would like me to get on the show. As always, you can reach me, Andrew Keats, on Twitter, and that's at Andrew Keats. You can send me an email to info@arian-productions.com, or do like the Show People page on Facebook at facebook.com/Show People Podcast, where you can join the Listeners Forum and find out about all things Show People. Please don't forget to send us a little Christmas present donation. From me and West End producer, have a very Merry Christmas!
Ho, 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 dear. That was a mouthful, wasn't it, dear?